Definitely due for a new Florida Gator video. It's been about 4 or 5 months since I've covered them on the show. I've got to watch the orange and blue game. I got a chance to check out some of the spring game. They've actually had some really good amount of people watch it. I think it was almost 60,000 people who watched the game, which is definitely some of the highest that we've probably seen. And there's definitely a lot to be excited about in terms of Florida football, especially compared to what we saw at the beginning of the season too. To go 4 straight wins to finish out 8-5, you have to feel optimistic about DJ Lagway. There are definitely still some serious question marks in terms of the program as a whole, but they definitely have the chance to be one of the biggest dark horses in not just the SEC, but really in all of college football. I mean, first things first. I mean, this is really their first winning season since 2020, since under Dan Mullen. So that's one thing to be seriously freaking excited about. I mean, as I sat there and watched the spring game and the orange and black game, or orange and blue game in general, there are definitely a couple things that came to my mind in terms of how Florida is going to look, and also a couple different things that I anticipate seeing in general. First and foremost, the big elephant in the room is DJ Lagway. Obviously, he's had a shoulder issue, he's had an ankle issue, a couple other things have been going on, and it seems to me as if, or at least that's what the reporting is, that he isn't going to be throwing probably until closer to the end of the summer, such as either late June or sometime in July. And I get everyone's a little nervous about that. And, it's definitely not something that you would ideally like to see. However, I think it's all going to work out. I think a lot of people are sensationalizing that DJ Lagway hasn't thrown the ball or we haven't seen him in public. And I'm kind of at the point now where, we saw what happened with Graham Mertz and everything. And I just don't want the same thing to happen with DJ Lagway in the sense of they try to rush him in, they try to get him to do all these throws, and then it ends up having a setback. I mean, we just watched Derek Carr over in the NFL retire over a torn shoulder, and he tried to jab on it. Then they kind of rushed him back in, and now he's retired. So the biggest thing with Lagway is I'm at the point now where, we still have 4 months left until about 3.5 months until the season starts. And I'm at the point now where I would rather have them hold out as long as possible for him to throw and make sure that he's 100% healthy rather than him be 75, 80% there, him throw a couple passes for the media. I mean, a lot of over sensationalizing the whole story. And I think he's going to come out healthy and be okay. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of their season, at least offensively, is going to ride on him to some capacity. Now, granted, they've done some work on the offensive side of the ball. Fortunately, the majority of their offensive line is coming back 4 out of the 5. And obviously, there were some serious growing pains last year, but I do think there's going to be some immense improvement on that front. We did see Jacoby Jackson. Yeah, we did see Jacoby Jackson carry for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns in the blue and orange game too. So I think he's going to be a serious weapon for Florida this year. I'm definitely fascinated to see how Billy Napier utilizes both Jalen Bowe and Jacoby as well, because I think it's going to be one of those things that not a lot of people are necessarily going to be talking about, especially with Lagway and Dallas Wilson is another guy that they're going to be having too. And, he looked really good in the spring game too. And granted, there's only so much analysis you can possibly put into a spring game because granted, you're only seeing so many of the packages that they're doing. They're not necessarily playing a full-on game versus a different program or anything, but we do get some insights in terms of what we can possibly expect to. I mean, even if you look at the Ron Roberts quote that I put in the ticker, I mean, I think they have everything in place. They do legitimately need to be a legitimate threat. I look at this Florida team defensively. Their front seven is significantly better now. I mean, they've added a couple of recruits. They fortunately didn't get completely decimated on the defensive side of the ball. The linebacking core is starting to come together. A number of good tacklers there, guys who are really athletic, and I think they can also have an opportunity to utilize them on the edge as well. But for me, the 2 big question marks that I'm having for Florida for this season, first off, I think the secondary is a serious question mark. I mean, even before Dijon Johnson got arrested this past weekend, it was already a big question mark to begin with. I mean, the depth just simply isn't there like it has been in previous seasons. I sit there and ask myself too what their other plan is, because yes, they did bring in Cormani McLean, and he was a highly touted cornerback too who transferred from Colorado, and he definitely had some maturity issues as well. And I think that's going to be a storyline that we're going to have to keep on seeing as the season starts and progresses too. I mean, granted, we don't know what the legal ramifications or consequences are going to be, but the reports that I've been reading is he essentially got caught in a car with some weed and possibly a gun too. So that's definitely not a good look. But for a program where that essentially was the weakest part of their team defensively, and Johnson was anticipated to take a big step in terms of his overall productivity on the defense side of the ball, it's definitely stings too, especially as his team really starts to put things together too. I think Ron Roberts is the guy defensively. I think he's a phenomenal coach, someone that doesn't get a lot of credit too. And even Blake Ruffino on his show, he mentioned this too when he was talking about Florida. For those of you who don't know, Ron Roberts was the head coach of Southeastern Louisiana for a period of time, and he covers Louisiana football extensively. And one of the things that he mentioned is even during his time as a head coach, one of his big question marks that he seems to always have, at least in terms of a program, is the secondary. I mean, even when you look at Florida last year, they were getting burnt on a number of different plays, just kind of being sloppy in terms of their tackling assignments, getting totally torched in terms of some long plays. And I just really hope that we're not experiencing the same sort of issues that we going to from last year. I mean, granted, they definitely turned things around in a hurry, and I'm excited about that. I think they deserve all the credit in the world for doing that. However, that secondary, if that falls apart similar to what it did last year, and the front seven doesn't keep up, or they have an injury bug, or they just totally get decimated in some of these tougher games at the beginning of the season, we could definitely be having a very similar conversation to what we had towards the beginning of the 2024 season. And now that we kind of talked about Florida defensively, obviously the big elephant in the room is going to be DJ Lagway, and at least in my opinion, most importantly, and something that's not being talked about enough, is the play calling. I've been hammering down over and over and over again that Billy Napier needs to hire a legitimate offensive coordinator who can actually call plays. One of the biggest things that's going to hold Florida back is Napier as a play caller. I've always felt that he was way too conservative a number of different times. I think he's had every excuse in the book to be able to finally turn this offense into something that's dynamic, something that's special. Instead, we kind of just get a middle-of-the-road sort of offense too. And granted, DJ Lagway made some elite throws last season, something that when you just watch that on the tape or you watch that live, you just instinctually sit there and say to yourself, holy shit, this guy is legit. There is something special about him. And granted, I was a little bit late on that train. I've talked about on the show even last year that Graham Mertz should be the starter through and through, but now it's DJ Lagway time now. And all the hype surrounding him, all the excitement surrounding him, he's got every God-given ability to be able to carry this team. He does have enough athleticism to the point where he is a legitimate threat running the ball, although given the lingering injuries that he has right now, I honestly don't even want to see him run the ball as much at all. Granted, now that we know that we have Jacoby Jackson and we have Jalen Bowe, two guys who I think are easily going to combine for 1,000 yards plus, if not more, depending on how much Florida actually decides to run the ball. Because let's say that the shoulder injury actually does linger into July or August or September. I mean, granted, teams are going to catch up on that. But however, they do have some time to kind of piece that together too, because they start off the year versus Long Island, then they go to South Florida. So even if there are some issues down the line, they can mask it a little bit. I'm not saying that they can forever, but when you look at the rest of their quarterback room, I mean, they have Aiden Warner and they have Harrison Bailey. And at the moment right now, they're kind of in a spot where they really just don't have much depth outside of Lagway. So if he were to get hurt or he were to have an extended injury, it's going to be tough for you to sit there and bounce back in terms of this Florida team. I'm not going to sit there and say that the season's lost. However, you're going to sit there and have to essentially run the ball very, very, very often, something that they don't necessarily want to see as much. And granted, we are going to miss Montrell Johnson. I've always given him a lot of love on this show, but I'm fascinated to see Napier as a play caller. How much is he going to depend on this rushing attack, and how much does he actually try to? Now, granted, I think the wide receiver room is not as strong as we've seen in the past couple of years. Obviously, they're going to miss Ricky Purcell and a lot of the other receivers that have been there. I feel positive about what we brought in terms of the transfer portal and some of the stuff that we saw in spring ball. I think Dallas Wilson obviously balled out in the spring ball game, which is something to be really excited about. They brought in Michael Stravant, a receiver from UCLA. I highly recommend watching some tape on him from last season because he was definitely a really strong weapon for a UCLA team that really struggled to throw the ball at times. So I think he's going to be a guy that could be a big target on some of those situational plays. And at this point now, it's an exciting time to be a Florida fan because you sit there and you ask yourself, is this the peak of Florida football? Is this the time where we're going to see them legitimately contending for an SEC championship? Is this going to be the time where we can see them in a playoff situation? They do have every ability to be a dark horse right now because they just have so much freaking talent on all sides of the football. And when you sit there and you piece that together, you sit there and say you have an elite quarterback who's only a sophomore and is only going to get better. But again, when you think about the play calling, when you think about the possible injuries that could linger on, even though I do think it's going to be all right, and I don't think it's going to be the end of the world, there are just so many question marks that seriously need to be answered as